The notification chimed at 3:47 a.m., jolting me awake in my cramped Chicago studio apartment. The sound cut through my dreams like a knife, dragging me back to consciousness with the kind of jarring urgency that meant something was wrong. Very wrong. A Facebook message from someone I hadn't heard from in 5 years, Jessica Chen, my old college roommate. Her profile picture showed her in scrubs, tired but smiling after what looked like a long shift at the hospital. The timestamp showed she'd sent it just minutes ago, which meant she was either working a night shift or couldn't sleep. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Zoe, I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't believe your parents are holding the memorial today. I wish I could be there. You were always so strong, and I know you'll get through this. Call me if you need anything. Love, Jess. My blood turned to ice water, each word hitting me like a physical blow. Memorial? What memorial? What loss? I read the message 3 times, my sleep-addled brain struggling to process the words. Memorial today. My parents. Sorry for your loss. None of it made sense. The last time I'd spoken to Jessica was at our 5-year college reunion, where we'd promised to stay in touch better and then promptly failed to do so. She had no reason to be offering condolences. With trembling fingers, I scrolled through the comments on a post I hadn't been tagged in, couldn't see directly, but the fragments were there in replies and shares scattered across my feed like pieces of a shattered mirror. Such a tragedy. So young? The Brennan family has been through so much. Rest in peace, Zoe. You deserved better. I remember when she used to play piano at church. Beautiful girl. Mental health is so important. If only she'd reached out for help. I sat up so fast my vision blurred, the room spinning around me like I was caught in a whirlpool. Someone was dead. Someone named Zoe Brennan. Someone who was me, but I was very much alive, breathing hard in my ratty pajamas with the faded Northwestern logo, staring at my phone like it might suddenly start making sense. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the device steady enough to read the screen, but I was very much alive, breathing hard in my ratty pajamas, staring at my phone like it might explain how I'd apparently died without noticing. I called Jessica immediately. She answered on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep and confusion. Zoe? Oh my God, Zoe, is that really you? Of course it's me. What the hell is going on? What memorial? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Jess? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Your parents, they posted yesterday that you died in a hiking accident in Colorado 3 weeks ago. They said your body was never recovered, but they found your backpack and identification. The memorial service is today at 2 p.m. at Sacred Heart. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering to the hardwood floor with a sound that seemed to echo forever in the sudden stillness of my apartment. I stared at it lying there, Jessica's voice a tinny whisper calling my name, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. It was like watching the last piece of a puzzle click into place, revealing a picture you never wanted to see. Sacred Heart. The same church where I'd been baptized as a baby, where I'd taken my first communion in a white dress that made me look like a miniature bride, where I'd been confirmed at 14 with my hand on a Bible I wasn't sure I believed in. The same church where I'd worn that hideous pink bridesmaid dress for my cousin Sarah's wedding, trying to smile while my parents introduced me to every eligible bachelor in the tri-state area. Where I'd sat in the back pew during my grandmother's funeral 2 years ago, watching my parents perform their grief like a well-rehearsed play, complete with perfectly timed tears and carefully chosen words, just like they were performing mine now. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. Jessica was still there, calling my name with increasing panic. I'm here, I managed to say. I'm okay. I'm just processing. Zoe, what is going on? How are you alive? Why would your parents? I couldn't answer that question. Not yet. Because the answer was buried in 3 years of silence, 3 years of pretending I didn't exist. 3 years since the night that changed everything. I have to go, I told Jessica. But thank you for calling. For caring enough to reach out. Even if you thought I was dead. Zoe, wait. I hung up and immediately started dialing another number. Rebecca. My girlfriend of 2 years, who was currently in Boston at a medical conference. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and alert despite the early hour. Hey, babe. You're up early. Everything okay? I'm dead, I said without preamble. A pause. What? According to my parents, I died in a hiking accident in Colorado. 3 weeks ago. There's a memorial service for me today. Silence. Then, what the actual fuck? That was one of the things I loved about Rebecca. No sugarcoating, no empty platitudes. Just honest, visceral reaction to the insanity of the situation. I don't know, I said, and suddenly I was crying. Real tears, the kind that come from somewhere deep and hurt on the way up. I don't know why they're doing this. I don't know what they have to gain. I just know that apparently the world thinks I'm dead, and I found out from a Facebook message. Baby. Rebecca's voice was soft now, professional. She was in her doctor mode, the one she used when she was trying to help someone navigate trauma. Where are you right now? My apartment. I'm safe. I'm scared, Becca. What if they've done something legal? What if they've had me declared dead officially? What about my job, my bank accounts, my life? We'll figure it out. We'll call my lawyer friend Marcus first thing in the morning. But right now, I need you to breathe, okay? In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. I followed her instructions, feeling some of the panic recede as oxygen returned to my brain. This was manageable. This was solvable. People didn't just disappear in the 21st century without leaving a paper trail, except, apparently, they did. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 3 years. Not since the night they discovered I was gay and dating Rebecca, the night my father called me an abomination and my mother said I was no longer their daughter. Not since they changed the locks on the house I'd grown up in, cancelled my phone plan, and told the extended family I'd chosen a lifestyle incompatible with our values. The memory still felt like a fresh wound, even after all this time. I'd gone home for what I thought was a routine dinner, planning to introduce them to Rebecca properly after months of careful hints and gentle preparation. I'd practiced the conversation in my head for weeks, had even bought my mother flowers, white roses, her favorites. Instead, I'd walked into an ambush. They'd seen the photos on my Instagram, the ones I thought were private. Rebecca and me at the lakefront, holding hands and laughing. Rebecca and me at her sister's wedding, dancing together while other couples swayed around us. Nothing explicit. Nothing inappropriate, just two people clearly in love. My father had been waiting in the living room with his laptop open, my mother standing behind him with her arms crossed and her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Explain this, he'd said, turning the screen toward me like it was evidence in a criminal trial. I'd tried to be calm, rational. I'd explained that I was gay, that I'd known for years but hadn't felt ready to tell them. I'd talked about Rebecca. How happy she made me, how she was finishing her residency and wanted to specialize in pediatrics. I'd tried to make them see that nothing had really changed except their knowledge of something that had always been true. It hadn't mattered. To them, I wasn't their daughter coming out of the closet. I was a stranger who had invaded their home. And their family, someone who had been lying to them for years and couldn't be trusted. They'd given me exactly 1 hour to pack whatever I could carry and leave. When I'd tried to argue, to reason with them, my mother had actually locked herself in the bathroom and refused to come out until I was gone. The next morning, my key didn't work. My phone was disconnected. My college friends started asking why my parents were telling people I'd moved away and didn't want contact with the family. Within a month, I'd been effectively erased from the Brennan family history, but apparently, I hadn't just been disowned. I'd been murdered. By 6 a.m., I was dressed and pacing my apartment, Rebecca still on the phone from Boston, talking me through the practical steps I needed to take. I'd called in sick to work, hard to explain that you need a personal day to attend your own funeral. Through social media detective work that would make the FBI proud, I'd pieced together the narrative my parents had constructed, according to their version. Meticulously crafted across multiple posts and shared with what seemed like the entire extended family. I'd been living as a recluse in Colorado for the past year, struggling with personal demons and making poor choices. The story was that I'd cut off contact with everyone, including them, and had been working odd jobs and living in a series of short-term rentals. I'd supposedly gone on a solo hiking trip to find myself and get clean, implying drug use that had never existed, and had tragically fallen from a cliff during an unexpected storm. My body was swept away by flash floods that made recovery impossible. So sad. So preventable. So convenient. The Facebook page they'd created, remembering Zoe Brennan, was a masterpiece of revisionist history. Photos of me from high school and college, carefully curated to exclude any hint of my actual life for the past 3 years. No pictures with Rebecca, no shots from my job at the marketing firm, no evidence of the stable, happy life I'd built despite their rejection. Instead, they'd chosen images that supported their narrative, me looking contemplative at the beach. Me hiking alone in Wisconsin, a trip I'd taken with college friends, but they'd cropped everyone else out. Me looking tired after a particularly brutal finals week my senior year. The comments poured in from relatives and family friends, sharing memories of the dutiful, straight daughter I'd apparently been. Aunt Patricia reminisced about my piano recitals. Uncle Mike shared a story about teaching me to fish. Several cousins mentioned how troubled I'd become in recent years, how I'd lost my way and become distant from the family. Not one person questioned the story. Not one person had tried to contact me directly before accepting that I was gone forever. By noon, I was parked across the street from Sacred Heart in my beat-up Honda Civic, watching black-clad figures stream into the church. Like a river of grief. The sight was surreal. Dozens of people I'd known my entire life, gathering to mourn someone who was sitting in a car 50 feet away, very much alive and getting increasingly angry with each passing minute. I recognized most of them from a lifetime of family gatherings, church services, and community events. There was Mrs. Kowalski from down the street, who used to give me homemade cookies at Halloween. Tommy Rivera, who'd been my lab partner in high school chemistry and had asked me to prom twice before accepting that I wasn't interested. My cousin Sarah, pregnant now with her second child, leaning heavily on her husband's arm as they climbed the church steps. Aunt Margaret was there too, moving slowly with her walking cane, dressed in what looked like a brand new black ensemble that probably cost more than I made in a month. At 83, she was the family matriarch, the keeper of traditions and secrets, and the one person who'd always seemed to see through my parents' perfect facade. She'd been the only family member to reach out after I'd been disowned, sending me a Christmas card with a brief note, "I don't understand, but I love you anyway." Watching her climb those church steps to mourn my fake death felt like a betrayal deeper than anything my parents had done. The woman walking up the church steps with the most dramatic flair, sobbing into a lace handkerchief like she was auditioning for a soap opera, was my mother. Victoria Brennan had always been beautiful in a cold, porcelain way, but today she looked like she'd stepped out of a funeral director's catalog. She'd lost weight, too much weight, and her blonde hair was styled in the kind of perfect waves that required professional attention. The black Chanel suit she wore was one I recognized from her closet, usually reserved for the most important occasions, charity galas, country club board meetings, and apparently, her daughter's fake funeral. Behind her, my father looked appropriately grief-stricken in his best navy suit, the one he wore to board meetings and court appearances. Robert Brennan was a successful corporate lawyer, accustomed to performing for juries and judges, and today he was giving the performance of his lifetime. His shoulders were slumped in a way that suggested the weight of unbearable loss. His usually perfect posture was gone, replaced by the broken stance of a man destroyed by tragedy. They looked like parents in mourning. They looked like they'd been practicing. What struck me most was how natural it seemed, how easily the performance came to them. This wasn't the first time they'd lied to protect their image, just the most elaborate. Growing up, I'd watch them spin story after story to maintain their reputation in the community. When my father's business partner was arrested for embezzlement, they'd somehow convinced everyone that they'd suspected all along and were cooperating with the investigation. When my mother had a very public breakdown at my cousin's wedding, after too much wine and too many Xanax, the story became that she was overwhelmed with joy and emotional about family. They were experts at revision, at crafting truth to fit their needs. I'd just never imagined they'd apply those skills to my existence. At 2:15, I walked through the church doors. The blast of air conditioning hit me first, carrying the scent of lilies and old wood and the particular mustiness that seemed to permeate every Catholic church I'd ever entered. The sanctuary was packed beyond capacity, every pew filled with people I'd known my entire life, and then some. There were faces I didn't recognize, colleagues of my parents, probably, or neighbors who'd felt obligated to pay their respects to the grieving family. Flowers covered the altar like a botanical explosion. Lilies, roses, chrysanthemums, arrangements. That must have cost thousands of dollars and looked like they'd been ordered from the most expensive florist in the city. In the center of it all, on an ornate brass easel, was an enlarged photo of me from my college graduation. I was smiling in my cap and gown, arms around both my parents, all of us looking happy and proud and completely unaware that this moment would someday be used as evidence of my life at my own fake funeral. It was a good photo, I had to admit. I looked healthy and hopeful, ready to take on the world. It was taken before everything went wrong, before I came out, before I became inconvenient. Before they decided I was better off dead than gay. The organ was playing something appropriately mournful. People were sniffling delicately, dabbing at their eyes. My cousin Mike, who used to give me piggyback rides when I was little, was reading from what looked like a prepared eulogy. Zoe was a bright light in our family, he was saying, his voice cracking with manufactured emotion. She had so much potential, so much love to give. If only she hadn't lost her way. I started walking down the center aisle. The first person to notice me was Mrs. Patterson, our next-door neighbor for 15 years. Her mouth fell open. The program slipped from her hands, then Tommy Ricci, my high school lab partner, nearly fell off his pew. His wife grabbed his arm, followed his gaze, and let out a small shriek. The ripple effect was immediate and devastating. Whispers erupted like sparks catching fire. Is that? It can't be. Oh my God. Zoe? Mike stopped mid-sentence, the eulogy forgotten in his hands. The organ player hit a discordant note and fell silent. I kept walking, my heels clicking against the marble floor with metronomic precision. Every step echoed in the sudden, suffocating quiet. My parents were in the front row, their backs to me. My mother's shoulders were shaking, with grief or terror, I couldn't tell. My father sat ramrod straight, his hands folded in his lap, staring at my photograph like it might reveal the secrets of the universe. I stopped directly behind them and spoke, my voice carrying clearly through the church's acoustics. I heard I was dead. My mother spun around so fast she nearly gave herself whiplash. The color drained from her face like water from a broken glass. My father turned more slowly, his expression cycling through shock, fear, and something that might have been shame. Zoe. My mother whispered, her hand pressed to her chest. Zoe, you're alive, I finished. Disappointed? The church had erupted in chaos. People were standing, pointing, pulling out phones. Someone was crying, real tears this time, not the polite weeping of a funeral. I heard my name being whispered, shouted, questioned, but I only had eyes for my parents. Hiking accident? I continued conversationally. Colorado? Really creative. I've been living in Chicago for 3 years. Working at Morrison and Associates. Downtown. I have an apartment on Clark Street, a girlfriend named Rebecca, and a cat called Muffin. Would you like to see my lease agreement? My tax returns? Proof of life? My father found his voice first, though it came out as more of a croak. We thought, we were told, you were told nothing. I cut him off. You decided. You decided. I was dead to you, so you made it official. Question is, why now? What changed? The answer hit me even as I asked it. I turned to scan the crowd and found exactly what I was looking for, a woman in expensive black, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Aunt Margaret. My grandmother's sister. The one who'd been talking about updating her will, the one who'd always said I was her favorite. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The sound bounced off the church walls, sharp and bitter and completely inappropriate for a funeral. She's changing her will, isn't she? I said, turning back to my parents. Aunt Margaret. And she was going to leave me something. How much? Enough to make murdering me worth it. Zoe, please, my mother whispered, glancing around at the crowd of shocked faces. Not here. Not like this. Not like this? I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. You held my funeral. You eulogized me. You buried me without a body and cashed in on my corpse. But sure, let's not make a scene. I raised my voice again, addressing the crowd. I want everyone here to know, I didn't die on a mountain. I didn't lose my way. I fell in love with a woman, and my parents decided that was worse than death. So they made it official. The silence was deafening. Then someone, I think it was my cousin Sarah, started clapping. Slowly at first, then faster. Others joined in. Not everyone, but enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca, saw the live stream someone posted. Holy shit, babe. You magnificent, terrifying woman. Come home. I smiled for the first time all day. Home. Not the house I'd grown up in, not the family that had erased me, but the life I'd built from nothing. The life they'd tried to bury. I looked at my parents one last time. My mother was crying real tears now, makeup smearing down her cheeks. My father looked older, smaller, like he'd aged a decade in the past 10 minutes. I forgive you, I said quietly. Not for you, for me. Because carrying this poison around is what actually kills you. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Mom? Next time you fake someone's death, maybe don't use Facebook. The privacy settings are terrible. I walked back up the aisle, past the flowers that should have been for my wedding instead of my funeral, past the photo of who I used to be, past the people who'd believed I was gone without ever trying to find me. At the door, I turned back one last time. Thank you all for coming. It's been enlightening. But I have a life to get back to. A real one this time. The Chicago wind hit my face as I stepped outside, cold and sharp and gloriously real. My phone was buzzing with calls, texts, notifications. The video was already spreading, my resurrection going viral in real time. I drove home to Rebecca, to Muffin, to the cramped apartment that was more home than the house I'd grown up in ever was. I had a life to rebuild, legally and emotionally. I had friends who'd believed I was dead to call. I had a job to return to on Monday, where my colleagues would probably think I'd had the world's most dramatic mental breakdown, but first, I was going to hold my girlfriend, feed my cat, and order the greasiest pizza I could find. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even, sometimes it's just staying alive. 3 months later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Heavy cardstock, elegant script, the kind of expensive stationery my mother had always insisted was important for proper occasions. Mr. and Mrs. Robert Brennan request the honor of your presence at the wedding of their daughter Sarah Elizabeth. To James Michael Morrison, at the bottom, in my mother's careful handwriting, we would love to have you there. We have so much to make up for. Love, Mom and Dad. I RSVP'd yes. After all, I'd already had my funeral. It was time for a wedding. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.